let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because I really want to frame this deep dive as sort of a cheat code for reading the macroeconomic chessboard, if that makes sense. And we have to start with the biggest piece on the board right now, which is the geopolitical shockwaves affecting energy.
Yeah, that conflict with Iran is basically the gravitational center of this entire report. The military escalation there hasn't just, rattled market sentiment. It has caused severe, immediate physical disruptions to global energy production and supply chains.
Yeah, it's physical, not just theoretical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in a highly leveraged global economy, when the primary input cost of literally everything spikes,
things break.
yes, the entire system begins to fracture.
And it's the velocity of this price shock that really stands out to me. Like, we are looking at the sharpest monthly rise in energy prices in decades.
It's historic.
It is. The source notes that for March, oil is up 54%. And get this, it was up 18.9% just last week alone.
Wow.
And that translates to a 33% spike in wholesale gasoline.
Right. And the most vital takeaway here for, any financial model is the duration of this shock. The outlook stresses that even if we saw an immediate diplomatic resolution in Iran tomorrow,
Which is unlikely.
right. But even if we did, these prices are locked in for months. The physical supply chains, the shipping routes, the insurance premiums on tankers, the forward contracts, they've been so fundamentally disrupted that these elevated energy costs are a structural reality for at least the next 2 quarters.
Okay, which forces us to look immediately at the consumer.
Yeah.
Because a 33% spike in gasoline, that isn't some abstract corporate problem.
No, not at all.
It operates as a massive overnight tax on everyday people. So if you are modeling consumer spending, you have to account for that capital just being vaporized at the pump.
Exactly.
But here is my pushback, or at least my question for you. How is it mathematically possible that consumer sentiment hasn't completely cratered when people are paying a third more at the pump in a single month?
It's a great question.
Because Friday's University of Michigan consumer sentiment data came in at 53.3%. And sure, that's worse than the expected 54%, and it's down from the prior 55.5%. But it didn't collapse the way experts feared. Why not?
What's fascinating here is the behavioral economics at play. And it is also the baseline to consider. The prior sentiment reading was already sitting at a historically cautious 55.5%.
They were already pretty pessimistic.
Yes, the consumer was already highly defensive.
Yeah.
So a drop to 53.3% reflects more of an incremental compounding of existing anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not a sudden, massive break from consumer optimism because they were already braced for impact.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That defensive posture is the only reason retail spending hasn't just completely seized up.
Yeah.
But because that headline sentiment number didn't completely crater yet, investors are basically desperately looking at this week's upcoming data releases, right? They want to see if the cracks are starting to show.
Oh, absolutely. They're hunting for those secondary cracks.
Yeah.
We're watching Tuesday's Conference Board consumer sentiment to see if it confirms that Michigan data. But Wednesday's data dump is what's creating a massive divergence in how the street is positioning.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because on Wednesday, we get February's retail sales data.
Right.
And historically, this is like a top-tier macroeconomic indicator. But the report explicitly notes that sophisticated investors are going to largely brush this off as old news.
Yeah, because it's entirely backward-looking. February's data captures a fundamentally different economic paradigm.
Right.
It measures consumer behavior before the Iran conflict really escalated and, before that 33% gasoline tax was levied on the public.
That makes Wednesday's other major release, which is the March ISM Manufacturing Index, really critical. That's to see if the conflict is going to derail the recent strong recovery in manufacturing growth, right?
Yes, the ISM is the actual star of the show on Wednesday. Unlike retail sales, it's a real-time, forward-looking indicator.
Got it. This brings us directly to the referees of the economy, right?
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve. This immediate threat of stagflation, stagnant growth, plus massive energy inflation funnels right up to Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. He is trapped between 2 conflicting mandates right now.
He really is.
And he actually spoke on Monday. The report notes he managed to comfort bond investors for now. Bonds traded completely flat for the week, closing at 4.34% after a pretty strong recovery rally.
Yeah, the market bought his narrative for the moment.
His exact stance on the Iran shock was, quote, "We don't know what the economic effects will be. We do think our policy is in a good place for us to wait and see." He explicitly noted that inflation expectations remain, quote, "well anchored."
He's telling them this isn't the beginning of some systemic 1970s-style inflationary spiral. He is trying to buy time.
Okay, and the report introduces the exact metric the Fed uses to quantify that anchor. It's called break of inflation, specifically the 5-year forward rate.
Yes, very important metric.
Right, and the document explains that you find this by comparing nominal and real interest rates 5 years forward. And right now, it has stabilized at 2.63%. which is up from 2.45% in February, but down from 2.74% on March 18th.
Exactly. That spread is the bond market putting its money where its mouth is. It represents the exact average annual inflation rate that institutional investors are mathematically pricing in over the next 5 years.
I like to think of it as the market's internal 5-year thermometer.
That's a great way to put it.
But the Fed watches this thermometer obsessively. And the outlook warns that if break-even inflation shoots above 3%, the Fed will likely start raising rates. Because of Powell's comments, the probability of an immediate rate hike actually fell.
Right.
But UT, the probability of 0 rate cuts in 2026 just shot up to a staggering 86%.
Yeah, that's the real story.
Which is wild because back in mid-December, that probability was sitting at just 3.3%.
I mean, you cannot overstate how violently that repricing alters corporate valuations. Back in December, every major equity model on Wall Street assumed the cost of capital would be significantly cheaper by the end of 2026.
Right.
Now, 86% of the market is acknowledging that the risk-free rate is going to remain highly elevated for the entire year. The liquidity cavalry has officially been canceled.
And that realization is bleeding directly into the stock market's performance. It is an absolute bloodbath out there. The S&P 500 has had 5 straight down weeks. It's currently down 9.1% from its early Jan peak, so it's approaching an official 10% correction.
Yeah, and if you look at the underlying sector rotation, it tells you exactly what the market is doing. All other major indices are already in correction territory.
Oh, wow.
Last week's carnage was brutal. Large cap fell 3.6%, small cap dropped 3.2%, and the NASDAQ plunged 5.2%. Growth stocks took a massive 5.3% hit, but value stocks only declined 1.7%.
Wow.
And world stocks dropped too. Developed markets down 1.8%, emerging down 4.5%. And the outlook points out that is heavily dependent on their reliance on imported energy.
Right. If you have to import oil and it's up 54%, you're hurting. So what does this all mean for the everyday stock chart?
It's all about discounting future cash flows. Growth stocks derive the vast majority of their valuation from terminal value, right? Profits they expect to make 5-10 years down the line. When there is an 86% probability that interest rates aren't coming down, the denominator in those models stays really high, which severely punishes those future earnings. Value stocks, on the other hand, generate immediate cash flow today.
I see. So capital violently rotates out of promises for tomorrow and into cash for today.
Exactly. It's a textbook flight to immediate yield.
Which puts all the pressure on the week's final, most dramatic data release. Because we have equities sliding into correction territory, margin compression, the Fed paralyzed, and then Friday brings the February jobs report.
And this is vital.
It really is. Because January saw a shocking, unexpected loss of 92,000 jobs. Investors are desperate to see if the job market is stabilizing or if it's weakening further.
This raises an important question regarding the true baseline of the U.S. economy. That 92,000 job loss in January was a profound miss. The labor market is the bedrock of systemic stability. If payrolls are contracting, household formation stops, debt delinquency spikes, institutional capital has to see this February report to determine if January was just a statistical anomaly, bad weather or something, or if the U.S. labor market was already hemorrhaging before the oil shock even began.
But here is the massive twist. The report drops on Good Friday. Good Friday is a market holiday. Traders are literally locked out of making trades. The market cannot react until Monday. So it guarantees a highly volatile Monday open. Okay, let's briefly recap this domino effect we've discussed. We have a geopolitical conflict in Iran that spikes oil 54%.
Right.
That threatens consumer resilience and manufacturing margins, which forces the Fed into a wait-and-see paralysis, leading to an 86% chance of no rate cuts in 2026.
Yep.
That pushes the stock market to the brink of a correction, setting the stage for a massive Good Friday jobs report cliffhanger.
That is the complete narrative.
Yeah.
That is the interconnected ecosystem right there.
And this matters to you, the listener, whether you are prepping for a major finance interview or just trying to understand why your own 401k is dropping.
Wow.
You now know the secret tripwires, like that 3% break-even inflation thermometer that the professionals are sweating over.
You've transitioned from just reading the headline numbers to actually understanding the mechanics behind them.
Yeah.
Keep that puzzle in mind as you watch the market open.